Hey there, guys. It's me, Dirt Muffin here for Chapter 16 of the Golden Armor. But I know there was like a week in between this recording and the last one, and I do apologize for that, though. If you're wondering why, and why I have so many absences so often that are generally really long and obnoxious, I will be addressing that problem at the end of this chapter. So, just in case you want to sit around and listen to me for a little bit longer, and as to why my chapters are not getting out as well as I'd and as fast as I would hope they would. But in any case, I'll address that later, and you're here for the chapter right now. Chapter 16, The Golden Armor. Truth in a Nightmare. Comet rolled as he slept, unable to stay in one position. His eyes were firmly shut, but he was doing things a pony normally did while awake. He kicked and shivered, bit his lower lip, and shook his head. Inside his mind, a dark storm was brewing. Old thoughts of his past covered the warm spot Comet so desperately searched for. Images of his parents and himself and a light gold mare with tangerine eyes and a verdant mane whisked around him, followed by several lines of speech Comet had long ago repressed. "Comet! What did you do?" He heard his mother shout. "Wake up, Nova! Please, wake up!" Comet heard a younger version of himself sob. "There's nothing you could have done," Sunstorm gently whispered to him. "Don't worry about me," chided a soft voice. "Go have fun." Comet's mind silenced that voice, and he dreaded the sound of it. He hadn't heard that voice in almost 15 years, but the words sounded like they were just spoken yesterday. The images of the golden mare slowly materialized before him. She was taller than Comet, but had a sickly look to her. Her wonderful tangerine eyes stared at him gently through her half-lidded eyelids, and the small smile she always wore was still upon her lips. Comet felt everything melt away as he returned her gaze, and whispered, "Nova." He felt himself start to move, and his voice grew louder. "Nova? Nova? Nova!" he shouted as he neared her, but just as he was about to reach her, her form glowed like the sun. Comet threw himself at her, trying to hang on to her, but she dispersed into small orbs of golden light and wafted around him in no particular order. Comet swung his head around at the lights and fruitlessly tried to grab them. The lights, one by one, faded away, even as Comet protested. She had left him again, and a feeling of dread mixed with sadness that couldn't be measured wrapped around Comet's chest. It was suddenly very hard to breathe. Way outside of the castle, another nightmare for Comet was taking place. Angel sat alone at the posh restaurant, slowly sipping at frozen strawberry drink. It was delicious, but her mood wasn't in the right spot. She wished that Comet was here with her, her favorite and totally awesome Pegasus, but sadly, she was a bat pony and therefore a night guard to Princess Cadence. The princess was actually not too far away from Angel, busily laughing and talking to random ponies as they waited for Shining Armor to arrive. Angel wasn't her only guard, though. Several other bat ponies and 2 unicorns stood very close, but at Cadence's assistance, they were all spread out among the restaurant, still within a quick dash of distance from her. Angel took another dejected sip of her drink and wished something interesting would happen. "Wait, don't I know that pony?" came a very vaguely familiar voice. Angel spun her head with a look of mixed feelings and saw Mangrove smiling widely at her while Sunstorm had his snout buried in the menu. He peeked up from it just enough, and just in time to see Angel before a dark gray blur assaulted his wife. Angel wrapped Mangrove in a rather large hug and gushed at her. "Oh, my Celestia, it's so nice to see you two again! How have you been?" After a few odd minutes of Mangrove and Angel exchanging some strange information, Angel was sitting at the table with them. "So, tell me, how was your date with Comet?" Mangrove asked invasively. Sun shook his head again and was about to stop the conversation, but Angel spoke first. "Oh, it was absolutely awesome!" Angel nearly shouted. "He took me to the carnival here and won me, like, 4 prizes.
I didn't know he was so good at ring tosses and bottle towers.
Sun froze up there, and Mangrove's smile seemed to sour. Comet had played the ring toss in a bottle tower? A sudden feeling of dread crept into Sun's chest, and as he renewed his interest in his menu, and Mangrove gave an unsure gulp.
He is sure, isn't he?
She responded in a shaky voice. Now, Angel would never call herself the brightest pony, but she could clearly see something was wrong with that bit of information. She narrowed her eyes at the couple and slowly talked.
Yeah, he did. Was that bad? Oh, nothing, Mangrove replied over enthusiastically. He always had an affinity for games like that, even when he was young.
Mangrove's face paled as she spoke the last word, and Sun's eyes shrank. Mangrove wasted no time in examining the table as Sunstorm raised the menu up further. They were trying to hide something from Angel. She hated being in the dark.
What is it?
Angel asked accusingly. Mangrove snapped her head up, and Angel leaned in a little closer to her, eyes still narrowed.
What's wrong if Comet took me there to play and played those games?
Mangrove gave a shallow smile and said,
Oh, it's nothing.
She didn't get to finish before Angel cut her off.
Yes, it is. And you two are acting like Comet did when I first met him. Evasive and unwilling to talk. What are you trying to hide?
Angel almost growled. It was not really a good way to talk to his parents, but Comet was hiding something from her ever since he had those pictures out on their first day. She initially just thought it was him being defensive of her invasion, but the more she thought about it, the more she was sure he was hiding something. His parents were no better at hiding it either.
What is he trying to keep from me and every pony else?
Mangrove's weak smile finally broke into a frown, and she sighed.
Angel, you must understand, Comet has always been protective.
Dear, Sun commented, staring straight at her magenta eyes. Don't. Comet will tell her when he's ready. His tone was almost angry to Angel.
Son, Comet will never tell her on his own, and you know that,
Mangrove said in her sad tone. Sun's face hardened as he returned to the menu. Well, make sure when he finds out, you tell him I had no part in this, Angel, he said, clearly angry. Right then, Angel became scared of exactly what she was trying to uncover, but it wasn't just a secret Comet was trying to bury, but it seemed to be one of his parents always wanted to forget as well. She suddenly felt a massive amount of apprehension as Mangrove turned her head back to her, but if his mother knew Comet wouldn't tell her, she readied herself for whatever was going to happen.
Did Comet tell you he was only a foal? Mangrove asked.
Angel nodded slowly, and Mangrove continued.
Well, that was a lie. He never wants to talk about it, but he had a sibling, his big sister and our only daughter, Nova.
Nova? Angel repeated quietly.
Yes, Nova,
Mangrove responded, and Sun tensed up, but still refused to talk.
She was 4 years older than Comet and was also very sick from birth. Nova had a rare immune system disorder that caused her to produce next to no white blood cells, so she was always coughing and bedridden. Comet, when he was old enough, made it his goal to keep his big sister healthy. He took it so seriously and even got his cutie mark for caring for her.
Angel's eyes widened as she sat in silence. He got his cutie mark from caring for his sick big sister?
He must have cared for her a lot,
she mused quietly, and Mangrove's face soured again.
She meant the world to him, Mangrove pressed on with sadness edging at her voice. Comet even refused to go to school so he could care for her. He only went because she insisted he go, but he never hung around with any pony afterwards. Whenever he came home, he was always right at the side of the bed, fluffing the pillows, moving the blankets, or playing a game with her. He always did it with a smile, though Nova meant more to him than even us.
Wow, Angel said softly. She never imagined Comet would do that, especially with how distant he normally acted. What happened to her? She asked before thinking. As soon as the question escaped Angel's lips, she instantly loathed herself for it. If the subject hurt the two ponies to even bring her up, what happened to her must have hurt 10 times worse. She broke her line of sight and stared at the ground. Somewhere between her, Mangrove sniffled. Sun, who was resolutely against telling Angel this, reached out a hoof and rubbed Mangrove's. What happened to Nova had clearly torn their family apart, and Mangrove took it especially hard. Somewhere deep in Sun's chest, the familiar feeling of guilt and self-loathing began to rise. Comet stood at his old house and looked around at the features. That ugly furniture his parents had used since they were married littered the room. The violent shade of blue on the walls seemed to glow and a creak echoed to him. The rickety staircase leading up to the second story creaked again, and Comet's eyes followed it up to a series of doors that lined the upstairs wall. 2 were wide open, one being Comet's old room and the other being his parents'. Comet slowly walked up the stairs, and the familiar creaking as he walked pushed him forward. His eyes jogged to the right as he searched the hallway. At the end, one door remained shut, and a large knot formed in Comet's throat. He walked slowly to it and felt the knot began to choke him up. That door was supposed to remain shut forever. But why was it pulling it towards him? Why was it pulling him towards it, rather? Comet stood outside the closed door and stared at it, afraid of opening it. Going into this room last time had made him cover himself with water and sit out in the snow, where he caught hypothermia. Still, the door called him, and he extended a hoof, pushing it open slowly. Inside this room, bright sunlight flooded it, washing it in a yellow glow. Stuffed animals of all kinds, including a stuffed version of Princess Celestia, sat on a shelf on the far wall, each smiling softly. Comet had let his gaze wander to the left, where the dresser sat covered with a crayon drawing of an orange colt and a gold pony, each bearing a large red heart. His lungs seemed to fail as he saw those drawings. There were supposed to be 6 hooves under the ground. His eyes moved over the bed covered in multicolored quilts, and, much to his surprise, a light gold pony with a verdant green mane smiled at him. Her tangerine eyes seemed to glow themselves, and Comet's heart skipped a beat. "Nova," he murmured, and walked slowly over to the bed. "Hey, Comet," she said weakly. "How's school today?" Without thinking, Comet put his hooves on the bed and stared at her. "Same as always," he said slowly, unsure of what was happening. Nova reached out a hoof and gently patted him on the head, and Comet inhaled sharply. This couldn't be real. No, it just couldn't. Nova smiled at him and gently pulled him into a hug. One Comet's body reacted to without his mind. He felt her gentle legs hug him, and his mind was wiped of all thought. It all felt so real. Nova required a lot of medication so she could have us around her. The doctor often said that she would be quarantined, but she adamantly refused to be. She always said that if she was isolated, there would be no point in living. She never said it out loud, though, but Comet was the main reason for her medication. She always washed his hooves and sterilized everything, but being a colt, he was prone to carrying diseases. Mangrove continued, squeezing Sun's hoof. Sun and I tried our best to care for her, but Comet insisted on being her guardian. He worked hard trying to keep her happy and healthy, but he even spent 6 whole weeks learning how to play a carnival game, the ring toss you mentioned, so he could win Nova a gift for her birthday. Mangrove paused there and thought for a few seconds before continuing. He won her a stuffed Celestia, and Nova cherished it. She always kept it close at night and talked to it. She was related, talked to it like she was related to Celestia. It was during that time Comet swore he'd become a royal guard so he could protect Nova better. Angel sat there, shaken by what she was hearing. Comet had a big sister he loved more than anything, and had a horrible feeling she knew where this was going. It also impressed upon her why his parents reacted the way they did when she told him about the carnival. That plushy Princess Luna had suddenly took on more of a meaning than a simple gift. Comet had won a Princess Celestia for Nova and a Luna for her, so she could only guess at how much she had really meant to him. After a couple more seconds, Angel finally worked up what little courage she had to ask a question. What happened to her? Mangrove's eyes watered, and Sun gave a small shudder. Comet was suddenly at his house, bundled up in his coat and wool hat, stomping his hooves angrily on the ground. But you promised we could go today, he whined to his parents, who were in turn getting ready to leave. Comet, we can't. We have to go. I'm sorry, we can't take you to the park, his mother said gently. Comet felt a couple of tears well up before a sweet and unfamiliar voice called out. Go ahead. I'll take him. All three ponies spun their heads to see a thickly bundled up pony descending the stairs. Her green mane poked out at different increments, and Comet's eyes widened. Nova, what are you doing out of bed? He asked worriedly. She smiled back at him and said to her mother, I'll take him. After all, the doctors say being in the sun helps with my condition. After several minutes of arguing and making sure they were all warm, Sun and Mangrove left the house, feeling a huge amount of regret. Nova was going to take Comet to the park. 20 minutes later, Comet and Nova stood at the park that was covered with snow. Comet checked and rechecked her wrappings as she sat on the bench. I'm fine, Comet, she cooed softly. Now go have some fun. You're young and need to play. Comet smiled at her and said, but be sure to tell me if you need something, before he ran off. He trusted his older sister explicitly and enjoyed himself for an hour and a half before returning to her. She was fast asleep, her head nodded forward, and Comet nudged her. It's time to take your medicine, Comet called happily. Nova remained asleep, and Comet prodded her harder. She remained asleep, and soon Comet was shaking her violently, screaming her name to wake her up. She kept her eyes closed, and a small, familiar smile on her lips as she did so, frozen in time. Comet pulled her halfway back home before we found him, Mangrove said, now fully crying. He was a wreck and tried to feed her medication as we waited for the ambulance and doctor. She was pronounced dead at the hospital, and Comet blamed himself for what happened. She really died from the irregular heartbeat the medicines gave her, but Comet refuses to believe that. He'd always held on to the belief that he was the cause of his death to his older sister and never forgave himself. He withdrew into a state that you met him in where he had no friends and pushed every pony away. He twice caught hypothermia on Nova's birthday because he sat on the bench where she died all day. Angel stared down at her plate, trying her best to hold back tears. No wonder it had taken her 4 months to get Comet to be friendly around her. She could only imagine what Comet had felt that day. The day his sister he had loved more than anything was taken from him. Sun gritted his teeth, and Mangrove finished. Comet has been trying to suppress the memories of his big sister, our daughter, for as long as we can remember. When he's around you, he's a different pony. It's almost like he can forget about her and be happy again. She looked up at Angel and smiled to her, tears streaking her cheeks. You're so much like her, that maybe Comet can finally move on. Comet sat at his footlocker, having woken up from that nightmare. Thinking about Nova always did that to him, giving him terrible dreams about her. He sat with the moonlight illuminating an old piece of parchment and he silently cried while reading it. The beautiful script was etched into his mind, but reading it always helped him through the night when he couldn't forget her. To my baby brother, if you are reading this, then the inevitable has happened. I'm sorry I can no longer be there to see you grow up and reach your goals, and it makes me sad to know that.
I do know what your cutie mark means now, and I wish to tell you. An exploding comet doesn't mean destruction, it actually means beauty. From our perspective, a comet burst is a beautiful sight since it makes hundreds of new stars for us to gaze at and enjoy. In the wake of a cataclysm, hope can be found. It will hurt when I'm gone, just like a shooting star exploding, but you must not give up. In the wake of your greatest tragedy, new doors will open for you, other than taking care of a sickly pony. Become the royal guard you always wanted to be, and don't hold back on my part. You're a great pony at heart, and one day you will show the world that. Always remember as well that, even though I can't say it to you with my voice, I love you more than life itself. You are my only friend, and the best caretaker I could ever want. I adored every moment I was with you, and missed you every second you were away. I know you will miss me, but remember that I will miss you more. Please help Mom and Dad get through my death by being yourself, since you will be their only joy in the world after my time comes. I don't know how it will happen, but don't ever blame yourself for whatever happens. I was never supposed to live even this long, but your care and love has performed a miracle by my giving me hope and a reason to live. Don't ever forget that, my little star. Don't ever forget that I love you more than anything else. Your big sister, Nova.
Okay, guys, that is that was chapter 16 of the Golden Armor. The feels, but yeah. In any case, what I wanted to talk about was my awkward recording, how they get uploaded and stuff like that. Mainly the reason behind all of my extreme absences, yeah. How, the reasons I'm gone for so long at a time is because I have people that live in the same house as I do, and they're generally loud. So, that would really disrupt the recording and cause some issues with it and stuff, and with all the background noise that they would be making. And the fact that I'm reading about horses. Yeah. But in any case, that's just my main reason, is that they would probably just get in the way of the recording and stuff like that. There'd be a lot of noise going on in the background and all that jazz. Plus my dogs would flip out when they come around. Yeah, so that's the main issue. What I'm probably gonna do about it is that I just don't care at this point. I'll probably end up just making a little sound box that I'll stick my mic in with some foam and a cardboard box. So most ambient noise won't get there. And so I'll probably be able to record a lot more often. So maybe about a chapter every day, or maybe 2 chapters a day, depending on how long they are. Maybe more, I don't know, but it's just all dependent on how I feel that day. But once that happens, I'll most likely be able to put out a chapter a day. So yeah, I'll just need to get a box. But yeah, that's pretty much what I'm gonna do to fix everything, and hopefully that works out well. But I'll test it out, and if it doesn't, I'll just really all I would be able to do is just ask them to try and be a bit quieter. But hopefully I can do that and help get out chapters more frequently than one a week for you guys, considering I hate leaving you guys on cliffhangers and stuff like this, considering you probably have already read through the entire story at this point, though I don't blame you. But yeah, that's that. That's probably what's going to end up happening, and hopefully it works out for the best. So yeah, in any case, all my information and stuff is in the description. And that's that. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for sticking with me. And thank you guys for putting up with my mediocre content. So have a good one, and thank you for listening.